What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Friday, April 25th edition of the Ship My Money Show. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoney DFS. 12-game MLB slate tonight. Might end up being 11. That is kind of up in the air. But either way, big slate. Tons of good tournaments to play. $8 large field flagship on DraftKings with 50K to first. And going to go through game by game talking about tournament strategy, player exposures, how these games look overall like I normally do. I'll talk about the exposures that I would have if the slate started right now. Obviously, that stuff is going to change for me between now and lock for a variety of reasons, one of which being I didn't have half the lineups when I ran my stuff. A bunch of those came out within the last few minutes. Obviously, ownership changes, all of that as well. So that's kind of just an extra data point for you, but I'll touch on all of the important stuff as I go through game by game. You'll be able to follow along up here at the top of the screen as well, seeing what game I'm on. As usual, going to be using the Run the Sims MLB projections. These are our new projections. They are available. You can sign up using the link in the description below. We did our best and are doing our best to basically just take all of the information that lives in Utical's brain and make it publicly available, put it into a model for you. So we have that. Uta's still making some tweaks as he finds things that don't exactly line up. But so far, really happy with how they've looked and going to use those as I go through, used them to build my lineups as well. We do also now have a note section here. So if you are somebody that does already subscribe, that is new. If you have not already subscribed, it is just an extra feature that we added. And it's just a spot for predominantly Yuta and I to add our own notes, that, more context to the projections, things that maybe we've noticed or that stand out to us that aren't necessarily directly obvious from looking at the projections. So that is there as well. Excited to use that. We'll be periodically posting in there. I know I put a couple in today on pitchers and things that I had noticed. So that's on there as well. That is a new addition. But starting with the Blue Jays taking on the Yankees in New York. So good hitting spot. Good park, 4 home runs, 5.2 implied run total for the Yankees, 4.8 for the Blue Jays. On the mound for the Blue Jays, we have Jose Barrios. On the mound for the Yankees, we have Carlos Carrasco. No real interest in either one of these pitchers. Barrios would certainly be the one that I get to first. Looks like maybe this is scaled wrong. I don't know. I guess I just need to slide over. So now you can see fantasy points. That's just what I was trying to do. Over here on the far right side, you can see our fantasy point projections. Barrios, if I was going to go to one of these guys, would be the one I go to. He's getting 2% ownership. He'd be in 2% of my lineup if the slate started right now. He is a competent pitcher, but not as good as he used to be. Not great strikeout numbers going back to the start of last year. Only a 19.5% K percentage, 1.5 home runs allowed per 9 innings, 4.25 xFIP, and going up against this very dangerous Yankees lineup. And then on the other side, you have Carrasco, who is even worse. 19.4% strikeout percentage is similar. 4.28 xFIP is similar. 1.69 home runs allowed per 9 is a bit worse. So actually, maybe I spoke too soon. They're more comparable than I thought they were. But either way, not very interested in either one of these guys. Very difficult strikeout matchup for Carrasco as well, in addition to him not being any good at getting strikeouts on his own. The Blue Jays active roster does also have the lowest strikeout percentage by a pretty wide margin against right-handed pitching since the start of last season. So not much interest in either of the pitchers, and going to keep it moving a little bit quicker than normal since there are so many games to get through. Offensively, this game does look relatively appealing. It's a game in New York that has a pretty high total, to middle of the road to below average pitchers on the mound. So I do think you can get to offense here. But again, with there being so many games on the slate, you are going to get relatively flat ownership across the board. The highest owned hitters in this game are projected right around 10 to 11%, with Vlad Guerrero from the Blue Jays side, and then Trent Grisham and Aaron Judge from the Yankees side. For me, I am getting to more of the Yankees than the Blue Jays. Trent Grisham does look like a solid value play here. $3,300 price tag leading off against Barrios. Barrios does give up power generally to both sides of the plate. Going back to the start of last season, 178 expected ISO to lefties, 184 to righties. So no real big split there, but we do know that Yankee Stadium does play up left-handed power more so than right-handed power. Grisham is just really cheap here in the leadoff spot. Also does have some stolen base upside as well. If I scroll over here, we have So not a particularly high stolen base projection, but he will run a little bit. You can see we have the highest stolen base projection on Josh Chisholm, very high there. So that's going to make him look a little bit better in addition to having power from the left side. But Grisham, from a value standpoint, looks good. $6,500 Aaron Judge, obviously, against anybody is going to be fine. Ben Rice, no longer catcher eligible. I'm not really sure why that had happened on DraftKings, but it did add some extra value to him. That is gone, though. He is back to first base only. Getting 7% ownership, I'd be getting about 9. Getting right around the field on Chisholm, on Goldschmidt, on Bellinger. So just a solid stack to get to, I think. They don't necessarily stand out a lot more than other stacks on this slate. Again, pretty wide open slate offensively, but I do like the spot for the Yankees here in Yankee Stadium. On the other side, Toronto, I think, is fine to get to as well, although I'm not getting as much. The field is playing them at a similar rate to the Yankees. Guerrero, like I said, getting about 11% ownership. Santander at 10%. Ernie Clement getting about 9% as a value play, batting 8th at 2,400. Bo Bichette, Alejandro Kirk. These guys are all like 5 to 10% owned. George Springer as well. Carrasco, not a particularly good pitcher, as I mentioned. Like I said, his numbers were actually a little bit better than I expected them to be, but still not good. 185 expected ISO allowed to righties since last year, 176 to lefties. His actual power numbers to both sides of the plate are even higher than that. So this is just a spot where I think the Blue Jays are fine if that's who you want to play. The matchup is certainly fine, but they're not a team that I am getting much of. I'm not getting as much as the field. And on a 12-game slate, that's just going to happen. It's not necessarily an indication of like, I think the field is wrong or I don't like the matchup in Yankee Stadium against Carrasco. It's more so just an indication of you have to pick your spot somewhere. And the Blue Jays, just at least for the moment, in my run of lineups before the show, are one of the teams that I am not getting to as much so that I can get to some others. The Yankees are the team that I'm getting more of here in this first game. Second game, Boston taking on the Guardians. This is the game that does have weather risk. Doesn't look particularly good right now, but does still look up in the air. Looks like it's kind of a matter of there's going to be rain at the start of the game, and then if there's rain behind it, you're in trouble. If there's not, they can probably play. Gonna wait and obviously wait till closer to lock in an opinion on that. With the way it looks right now, I think my approach would be to just not play it because it is a 12-game slate. And generally, you're just taking on a lot of risk going to a game that has legitimate weather concerns. The downside here is that when I ran my lineups before the show, I included this game because I wanted to get a feel too for how important I think this game even is. And I'm not getting to either of the pitchers. You have Tanner Houck taking on Ben Lively. I'm not getting to either one of them. The field's not getting to either one of them. The problem and the thing that makes it a little bit more difficult of a decision if the weather pattern does kind of hold the way it's forecast right now, where it's risky, but it's not a guaranteed washout, is that the offenses, Boston in particular, do look very, very good to me. I would be getting a lot of Red Sox if the slate started right now, particularly Jarren Duran and Rafael Devers. Remember that Cleveland changed the layout of their right field upper deck, for lack of a better word, last season, and it turned into a launching pad for left-handed power. So you're getting a really nice power park upgrade for the left-handed bats in this lineup. Jarren Duran, Rafael Devers, both look really, really good to me. I'd have 31% Devers and about 31% Duran and about 29% Devers if the slate started right now. They're both only projected for around 10% ownership. So it would be really, really easy if I just wasn't getting to much of either of these offenses for me to just X this game out if the weather forecast stays the same. But seeing how much I'm getting to, I might go ahead and roll the dice and just play it, if the forecast doesn't change. But hopefully we get some clarity. I think this is one where you kind of just have to make a decision for yourself based on the information that we have. I don't think there's a right answer. But like I was saying at the beginning, I do think the more games there are on a slate, the stronger case you can make for just not messing around with weather risk. Because even if the spot is really good, obviously the chances of any team on a 12-game slate being the team you have to have are pretty low. So really, I think it's just comes down to your risk aversion, what you want to do with this game. But if you are playing it, like I said, I do really like the Red Sox, the left-handed bats in particular. Duran and Devers both look absolutely great to me. You get some stolen base upside with Duran as well. You can see we have them as the two highest projected hitters on the Red Sox, or even in this game. Stolen base upside for Duran, like I said, is high. Obviously, it's not there for Devers, but a really high home run mark for these two as well. Looking at Ben Lively since the start of last season, 183 expected ISO allowed to lefties, 198 actual, only an 18.8% strikeout percentage, only an 18.5% K percentage against righties as well. Has done a much better job limiting production to righties. 146 expected ISO, 298 expected WOBA. So again, it's the lefties that are going to stand out, but I would also be over the field on basically the rest of the Red Sox, getting to Narvaez as a punt option at catcher, getting 2 to 3x the field on Bregman and Story, getting smaller amounts of Rafaela, Tristan Casas rather, but the Red Sox would be a team I'd be over on, and a lot of that would just be driven by how much I like Jarren Duran and Rafael Devers here. Not getting to as much Cleveland, but still getting over the field, it looks like. Just not getting this team not getting much ownership. Jose Ramirez projected for the most ownership at about 7.5%. I'd be right in line with the field there, but I'd be about 2x on a 4% owned Kyle Manzardo. I'd be about 2x on a 4% owned Bo Naylor. And then pretty much in line with the field at sub 5% ownership on the rest of this lineup. So Ramirez, Manzardo, Naylor would be the Bo Naylor would be the guys that kind of stand out to me as spots where I'd be likely to be above the field. Left-handed power bats. For Naylor, you have a relatively cheap catcher batting sixth that does have some power upside in this park. We know Manzardo has plenty of power upside at first base at 4,400, and then Jose Ramirez, pretty self-explanatory. Tanner Houck is a solid enough pitcher. It's not like it's an easy matchup, but the ball just carries so well in this park for left-handed power. Only a 129 expected ISO allowed to lefties since the start of last year for Houck, but he has only struck them out at an 18% clip. So, again, you're likely to have Ramirez, Manzardo, Naylor, Kwan. Kwan always puts the ball in play, so does Ramirez, but you're likely to have the lefties putting the ball in play here, and then, I'm willing to take my chances on them at low ownership. So I do like the bats here, left-handed power in particular, to recap, but we do also need to keep a close eye on weather. This one does look pretty dicey. Houston taking on Kansas City in Kauffman Stadium. Again, tough park for strikeouts, good park for offense, but tough park for home runs. So kind of a weird one for DFS. We have Seth Lugo going for the Royals, Hayden Wesneski going for the Astros. Neither of them getting much ownership, both 5% or less. I'm not getting to either one. The best case you could make for either one is simply they're low owned and you're trying to win, a 30,000 entry tournament. But neither one stands out. Neither one has a particularly good matchup. Both of these teams are pretty difficult to strike out. Houston's active roster against right-handed pitching since the start of last season ranks 26th in strikeout percentage. Kansas City ranks 29th. And then, as I said, this is also the second most difficult park to get strikeouts in baseball, the most difficult outside of Coors Field. So no real interest in the pitching here. Not a ton of interest in the bats either. My highest owned guys would be Bobby Witt and Jonathan India. They'd each be in about 10% of my lineups. India is just cheap at 3,300. Didn't have this lineup when I built lineups, so I am double checking. We have that now. He is leading off, which is what we had projected. So you basically have sub 10% ownership to this entire game. And there is obviously talent here. So it does become a kind of interesting spot to look to just for upside. Bobby Witt, like I've said a million times, built to play in this park. Tons of power, tons of speed. And then Jonathan India gives you stolen base upside as well. He is leading off. He has NPE. He's cheap. So getting to those guys, getting to, some Yordan Alvarez, Pasquantino, Yainer Diaz, any of these guys are fine. They are talented. They're good hitters, but the matchup isn't ideal. The park isn't great for hitting home runs. 159 expected ISO allowed to righties. 146 to lefties since the start of last year for Seth Lugo, 146 to lefties, 247 to righties for Wesneski, but he also has a 28% K percentage against righties. So you get a situation where, your Bobby Witt, Jonathan India type guys, Salvador Perez, righties have shown the ability to do more damage against Wesneski, but you do also get a lot of strikeout upside or strikeout risk, I guess, as well. Larry said no Salvador Perez, so scratch that one, but you do have India and Witt at the top. Good point on not having Perez. It does weaken that lineup a little bit, obviously. Still not enough that I think I would want to really be getting to much of an $8,200 Wesneski, but it does make the stack look a little bit less appealing as well. I think Witt and India are the guys that I would just kind of single out there. Angels taking on the Twins in Minnesota. So a park downgrade for the Angels. 4.9 implied run total for Minnesota. 3.7 for the Angels. Pablo Lopez going for the Twins. Kyle Hendricks going for the Angels. Should not be surprising that I have basically no interest in Kyle Hendricks, and neither does the field. About sub 2% projected ownership to Hendricks. I'm not getting to him. No real reason to. Like 5,600, obviously he's an okay value just because he's so cheap, but yeah, I don't think you need it on this slate. Pablo Lopez, 8,500, the more interesting of the two. I'm not getting to much of him, but I wouldn't talk anybody else off of it. We have him projected for 17.2 DraftKings points. Decent value here at 8,500. Decent matchup. You know, the Angels offense has been solid to start the season, but there is still some strikeout upside here, and they are getting a park downgrade. Like I said, their active roster is tied for 4th in K percentage against right-handed pitching since the start of last season. So there are strikeouts to be had here. Lopez does have a 25% K percentage, 3.35 xFIP since the start of last year. He's getting about 17% ownership. So I think he's a perfectly fine play. I just don't have much of him right now, but there's no great reason for it or anything like that. He hasn't been working super deep into games so far this year. That is, a small sample. He's only made a few starts, but that is lowering his projection for us a little bit. But at 8,500, he still projects okay. He's made 3 starts this year. He threw 98 pitches 2 starts ago in 7 innings against the White Sox. Only threw 78 in 4 2/3 against the Royals in his most recent start. I think that was one where he ran into a little bit of trouble. Also, he had been on the injured list with a hamstring injury, so not an arm injury, which is good. But again, seems like he could be a little bit limited here, which did lower our projection a little bit. So I'm not getting much, but if you wanted to play him, I don't think there's anything really wrong with him outside of his absolute ceiling maybe being a little bit decreased because of coming off the injured list and coming off the injured list and just in general, not working super deep in the games so far this season. Einsteinium said, happy to tell you I'm not on Hendricks. That surprises me, but there are 24 pitchers going today, so I'm sure you found some other god-awful arms to get to. Can't wait to find out who they are. Offensively here, getting to Minnesota clearly is going to look fine against Kyle Hendricks. The dude sucks. I didn't think he was very good when he was winning Cy Youngs, and I certainly don't think he's very good now. Byron Buxton, the guy that's showing up the most for me, showing up the most for the field, getting about 10% ownership. I'm getting the 16%. Power upside, stolen base upside, all that is there for him. Hendricks doesn't miss a lot of bats. Really has a small margin for error at this point in his career. Has to be pretty much perfect. I will say, going back to the start of last season, he has held righties to only a 122 expected ISO, despite striking them out only 16% of the time. Lefties have done more damage. 14% strikeout percentage, 354 expected WOBA, 182 expected ISO. Trevor Larnach getting about 9 to 10% ownership from the left side. He does come with some pinch hit risk, but also plenty of power, and the way that Minnesota's lineup is constructed does lower Larnach's pinch hit risk a bit. He is followed by Carlos Correa, Ryan Jeffers, Ty France, Brooks Lee, all hitting from the right side. So you can, but if you bring a lefty in to face him, they have to face righties after him. If you bring a lefty in to face Julian, who's leading off, you still have 2 lefties separated, or 2 righties rather, Buxton and Keyshaw, separating Julian from Larnach. So it does become a bit more difficult for opposing teams to match up with Larnach with left-handed pitchers. If the Angels do go to a lefty, he is likely to be pinch hit for, and the Angels do have 3 of them. So that, increases the chances a little bit as well. But the lineup construction lowers them a bit. Luke Keyshaw getting 8% ownership. I think that looks fine. He's still 3,500. I've mentioned it a bunch of times, but he's just mispriced. He has stolen base upside. He projects as an above average hitter. If you want to get to him against Hendricks, that is perfectly fine. Although, again, he is right-handed, and Hendricks has somehow been able to control right-handed power so far. So a secondary stack for me overall. Buxton is the guy I'm getting the most of. I'm not getting to the Angels side much at all against Pablo Lopez, and that is not surprising whatsoever. Milwaukee taking on the Cardinals in St. Louis. 4.3 implied run total for the Brewers, 4.4 for the Cardinals. Matthew Liberatore going for St. Louis. Chad Patrick pitching for the Brewers. Not much interest in either one of these guys. Sub 2% projected ownership coming into Patrick, about 3% projected ownership coming into Liberatore. Liberatore would be in like 1% of my lineups. I wouldn't have any $8,100 Patrick. Liberatore has shown a little bit of improvement so far this year. Not even a little bit. He has shown improvement so far this season. Only 25 innings pitched, but his stuff plus last year was 96.5. So far this year, it's jumped to 103.5. So a really big jump there. Strikeout percentage has jumped from 22% last season to 24.5% so far this season. Velo is up about a half mile an hour as well on his fastball. So he is somebody where, if you wanted to be early and roll the dice on him, I don't think it's a crazy idea in general, but you do have a Milwaukee lineup that is not the easiest to strike out. And more importantly, you have a 11 or 12 game slate that does have a lot of good pitching. So I did want to point that out with Liberatore, that maybe we are seeing strides from him. Maybe we are seeing him become a better pitcher. And I will be interested just to, kind of see how he performs today in general, but that's still not getting him into lineups for me or for the field. For offenses, nothing really showing up. William Contreras, Joey Ortiz from the right side against Liberatore, I think is fine, but nothing is a priority there. Rhys Hoskins, right-handed power as well. As I mentioned, Liberatore has been better so far this season. You do have right-handed power for Milwaukee. This is a park that this time of year generally doesn't play great for power. It gets really humid in St. Louis during the summer, and the ball carries a lot better, but you're not quite at that point of the season yet. Going back to the start of last year, Liberatore has allowed a 175 expected ISO to righties, 20.5% K percentage, 328 expected WOBA. So nothing that really stands out as horrible there, but he does give up some power. Contreras getting 5% ownership, Ortiz getting like 2%. If you want to go to those guys a little bit, it's fine, but nothing that looks like a priority. And then similarly, no real priorities on the other side either. 8% ownership coming into Wilson Contreras, 6% to Lars Nootbaar. Those are the highest owned guys from the Cards. Don't really have a ton of interest in them in this park. Very limited sample for Chad Patrick, but he has allowed a lot of power to righties so far. 279 expected ISO, probably comes down. You're only talking about 188 pitches to righties, 171 to lefties. So very small sample size. I think basically my approach would be, if you're going to go to Cardinals bats, just go to the best ones. And that is pretty much what the field's projected to do as well. Larry said Liberatore throwing his slider more, if I remember right. He has thrown his slider. So last year, threw his slider 37% of the time to lefties, 22% to righties. So far this season, throwing it, very small sample, 50% to lefties, 22% to righties. So nothing that I would say is definitely more. He's only thrown 48 total pitches to lefties, 96 total pitches, 48 have been sliders. Righties, he's at basically the same usage as he was last year. But like I said, overall, his metrics across the board do look better. So it will be something to keep an eye on there. Cincinnati taking on the Rockies in Coors Field. Low total in this game for a Coors Field game. Andrew Abbott going for the Reds. Kyle Freeland going for the Rockies. Right around 2% projected ownership coming into a 5K Kyle Freeland. Andrew Abbott getting 6% ownership at 8,600. I do not have any Abbott. If you want to go to some Abbott just because the Rockies suck, that's fine. But it is still Coors Field. It is going to lower your strikeout projection. It is obviously going to increase the chances of you just getting unlucky on batting average on balls in play, all of that stuff. At sub 10% ownership, if you want to go there, I think it's fine, but that's not a route I'm taking. I am actually getting to some Freeland. I have like 7%, so not like I'm taking a crazy stand there or anything. His stuff plus actually has the biggest jump of any pitcher pitching today. It's still not good, but it went from about 90 last season. It's gone up to about 98 so far this season in 26 innings pitched. His strikeout percentage is basically identical. His velo is up just right around like half a mile per hour on his fastball. So maybe it holds, maybe it doesn't, but it's more so just a function of he is $5,000. The Reds are certainly not the best offense. You do also get a left-handed Freeland, which turns Ellie De La Cruz around to his weaker side. So that's going to weaken the Reds offense a little bit, but there's no ringing endorsement here. It's simply he's low owned. He's 5K. If I look at what my Kyle Freeland lineups look like, I would hope that they are just very high upside lineups. So like here, I have a lineup that has Logan Gilbert as my other pitcher, the clear number one pitcher on this slate. It has a 5-man Toronto stack against Carrasco in Yankee Stadium. It has the 2 left-handed Red Sox that I want badly in Devers and Duran. Here we have a 3-man middle of the order Red Sox stack with a 4-man Milwaukee stack, 5-man Yankee stack with the good Yankees. Actually, doesn't have Judge, but 5-man Yankee stack. These pretty much all have Logan Gilbert as well. Here we have a Judge, Ben Rice 2-man with a 5-man Mariner stack. So like they are really high upside lineups. And obviously that's what I would want if I am paying down for Freeland, but not going to be something that I do all that much because he's still Kyle Freeland, and saying Kyle Freeland is better than he was last year or has been better than he was last year is still not much of a compliment. Josh said, do you think the Red Sox game plays? I don't know. I'm waiting for a weather update on that. I think it's really up in the air right now, but hopefully we get a more definitive forecast. Talked about it a lot when I was talking about that game, how I would approach it. Ideally on just got postponed. Perfect timing. So glad that happened because I did not want to deal with it, given how much I liked Rafael Devers and Jarren Duran. So glad that one's just gone way ahead of time. Don't have to deal with it. Good timing on the question, and glad that we can avoid that game. Offensively here in Colorado, not a ton of ownership, not a ton of exposure for me. Like on the one hand, you have a sub 10% owned game across the board in Colorado. So there is going to be tournament appeal. Like you're getting the best park for offense in baseball and nobody wants to play it. But on the other hand, you do have expensive price tags here. You look at the Reds, Ellie De La Cruz coming in at 6,400, Matt McLain coming in at 6K, Spencer Steer at 4K is not super expensive at all, but it's more than, he was. Marte at 3,900 offers some value. Austin Hayes is up to 5K. So it's not the most appealing price point for the Reds when you have 21 other offenses to choose from. And then for the Rockies, it's obviously not super appealing because they're the Rockies and they blow. Brenton Doyle, Hunter Goodman, I'm fine getting to either of those guys, but overall this team just sucks. So it's tough to get there, but if you can make it work salary-wise, I think obviously the ceiling is very high. De La Cruz going from the wrong side against Freeland, but still, has plenty of upside and is in a park that is perfect for him. He's the perfect type of player that, can just easily take advantage of the extra space in the outfield, turn singles into doubles, doubles into triples. If he does only single, he obviously is going to look to run. So, goes without saying that the upside is very high if you can get there. Matt McLain, good hitter, obviously, but he is really expensive. Spencer Steer, Noelvi Marte, these guys are fine, but just a tough spot to get to a lot of. As far as stacking, it looks like I'm not even really getting many Cincinnati 2-mans or 3-mans. So it's probably just mostly like one-offs for me, or it's a weird spot. Like I said, Freeland has looked better this year as well, but still not good. So I think it's a perfectly fine spot, but nothing that really stands out. And that's reflected in the total too. Like keep in mind when you look at implied run totals for teams, or when you look at game totals, you want to keep baselines in mind. Like a game that has a 9-run total or a 9.5-run total in Colorado, you can view it differently than a game that has like a 9.5-run total in T-Mobile Park in Seattle, because Seattle is the best pitcher's park in baseball. It's just always going to have lower totals. Colorado, you're talking about a park where over the course of the season, you're going to be getting 11, 11.5, 12-run totals. And here you're getting, a 9, 9.5 total. So it does speak to that as well. WW Fresh said, this idiot thinks Freeland is good. Those words absolutely never came out of my mouth. But yeah, definitely didn't say that. Miami taking on the Mariners in Seattle. Best pitching option on the slate going for the Mariners in Logan Gilbert. Cal Quantrill going for the Marlins. Gilbert was already a really good pitcher. You have him in a great park. You have a really good matchup going up against the Marlins. 3.1 implied run total for Miami. Everything looks great. And then Logan Gilbert has also made improvements this year. I mentioned this in the notes tab on the projections page, but he's increased his splitter usage. In the past, he threw it pretty heavily to lefties, didn't throw it as often to righties. Last season, he threw it 14% of the time against lefties. He threw it 13% of the time against righties, so not even as much as I thought he had to lefties. But so far this year, throwing it 22% of the time to lefties. Small sample there. Bigger sample against righties. He's throwing it 26% of the time. 31.5% swinging strike percentage on that pitch to righties this year. 30% to lefties. Overall, since the start of last season, 22.6% swinging strike percentage on it to lefties. 25.5% to righties. So you see him throwing that pitch more. His stuff plus is up slightly from 96 last year to 97 this year, but his strikeout percentage so far in 27 innings pitched has gone from 27.5% up to 38%. Obviously, you expect the strikeout percentage to come down at least somewhat, but there is obviously reason to think that he's going to improve his strikeout percentage. He's throwing a pitch that gets a ton of swings and misses more than usual. So yeah, Logan Gilbert looks great. Very happy to get to him. 47% projected ownership to him. I'm getting to 84%. Should be the highest owned guy on the slate, and I'm right there with it. Cal Quantrill on the other side, no ownership coming into him. I'm not getting to him. Good strikeout matchup, good park, but that's the extent of it. Quantrill, if you just look at his fastball velocity, it's misleading. You would think he's actually throwing a lot harder this year than he has in the past, but it's really just that he's now throwing a four-seam fastball, and he didn't in the past. So, like, his average fastball velocity is up from 88 miles an hour last year to 93 miles an hour this year, but it's just because he's throwing a fastball, an actual fastball, instead of cutters or two-seamers, whatever he was throwing last year. Still not getting strikeouts, still doesn't look good in terms of stuff plus or anything like that. He is 5,200, but I am getting more Freeland than him if I have to pay down to that price range. The park obviously is good, but that's about it. Quantrill, since the start of last year, only a 16% K percentage, 4.92 xFIP. The Mariners are a team that strikes out, but they do have a lot of power as well. And I do like them here against Quantrill. Obviously, the park sucks for hitting home runs. It sucks for scoring runs in general, but you are facing a pitcher that does not miss bats for a lineup that has a lot of power and a lot of swing and miss. So they are likely to be able to put the ball in play. Since the start of last season, Quantrill has only allowed a 153 expected ISO to lefties, 174 to righties. He's not terrible as far as allowing power, but again, I'm cool with just taking my chances on the power bats in this lineup. Jorge Polanco showing up 26% for me. Third base and shortstop eligible, so you have MPE there. Luke Raley getting 9% ownership. I'm about 13%. Right around the field on a 10% owned Rodriguez. Cal Raleigh getting 13% ownership. I'm a little below that at 8%, but I think getting to any of those guys is fine. If Miles Mastrobuoni is in the lineup, he's an okay punt at 2,200 with MPE. Obviously not nearly as exciting as Raleigh, Polanco, Raley, Rodriguez, but getting to some Mariners here, I think, is perfectly fine. Would obviously like them a lot more if they were playing in a different park, but it is baked into their salaries. You know, I've mentioned this a lot before, but Julio Rodriguez would generally be more than 5K if he didn't play his home games in Seattle. Polanco at 4K, Raleigh at 3,500, Raleigh at 4,800. All these guys would just be more expensive if half their games weren't played in the worst park for hitting. So across the board, I think Seattle is the priority in this game. Logan Gilbert, the clear number one pitcher on the slate, highest projected pitcher, my highest owned pitcher. And then offensively, I would certainly rather be getting to Mariners bats than Marlins bats as well. Rays taking on the Padres in San Diego. Michael King going for the Padres. Shane Baz going for the Rays. Both of these guys have looked a bit better this year than last season. Michael King's stuff plus has gone from 96 last year up to 100 so far this year. In 28 innings pitched. We haven't seen it reflected in his strikeout numbers yet. 27.2% K percentage this year, 27.5% last year. Fastball velocity is about the same as well. And this is a spot against Tampa Bay where I think he looks pretty decent. 20% projected ownership to King. I'm getting to 23%. Just looks good at 9,500. Second or third highest projected player on the slate, pitcher rather on the slate. We have him second, but I am personally a little bit higher on Yamamoto. I'll talk about that when we get to that game. But King, one way or the other, I think looks pretty good here at 9,500 against the Rays. Shane Baz has also looked very, very good in pretty much every metric so far this season. Last year, his stuff plus grade was 102. Through 22 innings so far this year, he's up to 106. His strikeout percentage is up from 21.5% last year to 33.5% this year. His average fastball velo is up from 95.5 miles an hour last year to just shy of 97 so far this year, a little bit over 1 mile per hour. He does have a brutal matchup here, though, against the Padres. This is a very, very difficult team to strike out. They are not as difficult now that they don't have Luis Arraez. He's on the injured list after that collision at first base, but overall, it is still a good offense, a tough team to strike out. So that is driving down Boz's projection a bit. And he is still pretty expensive at 8,800. But the talent is certainly there. And this is somebody that, was a very highly regarded pitching prospect as well. And now you're seeing him really put it together. He's had injuries in the past. Looks very, very good. Just not a matchup where I really want to get to him. WW Fresh, anytime you want to play head-to-heads, my screen name. You're watching my show. You can send them whenever you want. But yeah, like Boz, from just a raw upside standpoint, he has it. But really tough matchup. Obviously, a ton of pitchers to get to. So I'm not really getting to much of him. Fields at about 8%. But yeah, Michael King looks like the priority for me here. Offensively, I'm not getting to much of this game. The field's not getting to much of this game. 4% projected ownership to Fernando Tatis is the highest mark on the slate. My highest owned guy in the game is Yandy Diaz at 3%. So pretty much just to stay away from me offensively. If you wanted to dig deeper into the pitching and see, what they struggle with, King has held righties since last year to a 129 expected ISO, lefties rather 141 expected ISO, 31% K percentage to righties, 25% to lefties. There's nothing there really that stands out as far as being an issue. Shane Baz, 159 expected ISO to lefties, 147 to righties, 24% K percentage pretty much across the board. And again, even better this year. So it's not even a spot where I think there's anything that stands out as far as it being an advantageous matchup for any individual hitters. So I really just have a hard time wanting to get to the bats here when you have so many good offensive spots on this slate. Arizona taking on the D-backs in Arizona. 4.2 implied run total for the Diamondbacks. 4.7 for the Braves. Zach Gallen going for the Diamondbacks. Chris Sale for the Braves. Surprisingly high total, I think, in this game, considering that you have Sale and Gallen. Not that it's, a really high total or anything like that at about 8.5, but these are both obviously good pitchers. But neither one looks great on this particular slate. They both obviously have difficult matchups. Chris Sale, 9K, getting 5% ownership. $7,800 Gallen, getting 4% ownership. I'm getting like 1 to 2% of either of them. It's pretty self-explanatory here. Like, I think they're in that Shane Baz category where if the winning tournament lineup tonight were to have Chris Sale or Zach Gallen, nobody's going to look at it and be like, wow, like, I can't believe those guys had good games. They're good pitchers, but there's just pitchers that look better, enough pitchers that look better on this slate, combined with also something that happens on these larger slates too, is, if you have a 5-game slate, a 6-game slate, it becomes difficult to get low-owned offenses that look remotely good at all. And so going to the pitcher that has a lot of talent, but that is in a tough matchup and doesn't project that well, becomes more appealing because you can just say, all right, well, I'm going to play one of these good offenses that is 15% owned, and I'm going to just hope Chris Sale has a good game. But here on an 11-game slate, you have plenty of offenses. Pretty much any offense you choose is just going to be 5 to 10% owned. And so you don't have to worry about offsetting it as much, offsetting that ownership as much. And so that makes them look a little bit less important as well. So basically, they're just in that bucket with Shane Baz, where if you want to click them into your lineup, go for it. They're good pitchers. It's not like you need some sort of miracle for them to pitch well, but they're not priorities for me. They're not priorities for the field. I don't really see myself getting to them. I am getting to the offenses here a little bit. Atlanta in particular. Austin Riley showing up in 15% of my lineups. Ozzie Albies, Alex Verdugo, Michael Harris, all in about 10% as well. They're all projected for sub 5% ownership with the exception of Riley at 7%. And I don't like the matchup against Gallen. I think he's a good pitcher, but you do also, have a 4.5 to 5 implied run total against him. And kind of like I was saying with that Colorado game, but in the opposite direction, anytime you see a 4.5 to 5 implied run total against Zach Gallen, that does kind of stand out because he is a good pitcher overall. But we know this Braves lineup has a lot of talent. They have stolen base upside. They have power upside. And Gallen has struggled in a limited sample so far this year as well. 192 expected ISO allowed to righties, 223 to lefties. He hasn't been himself so far this season as far as being able to limit power. So that stands out a bit. Stuff plus is never good for him because he is somebody that relies on a changeup. He throws a good changeup, and the stuff plus metric itself is biased against changeups. So it is a reminder that whenever you're looking at stats in general, but any of these like advanced stats, you also want to, just like I was saying with Vegas run lines, you want to have a baseline. You don't want to just look and say, oh, Zach Gallen is not actually a good pitcher because his stuff plus is, 91 or 92. It's because of what he throws and the metric, not not liking his pitch mix in general, even though his specifically is good. But it is down even a little bit from his baseline. Last year, 91.5. This year, only 90. His strikeout percentage so far is down about a point. His velo is down about a mile per hour on his fastball. And like I said, his expected power numbers are up a lot. So this isn't, me saying that I think Zach Gallen is suddenly terrible, or that, he's even going to continue being bad beyond his last start or, going forward. But it is saying that we have seen him struggle a bit with limiting hard contact so far this year. His stuff is down at least a little bit across the board. And now he does have this matchup against a Braves team that has an abnormally high run total against him, that does have a lot of power bats in their lineup. And you really don't have to get to too much of them to be taking a nice stand against the field, because they're just projected for basically no ownership here. On the other side for Arizona, I am getting to a little bit of Grichuk, a little bit of Gurriel, but not much in general for the Diamondbacks. I do prefer getting to the Braves side here. White Sox taking on the A's in Sacramento. Luis Severino going for the A's. Sean Burke going for the White Sox. I think it was Einsteinium asked earlier if I was surprised that the A's have the highest run total on the slate. Kind of. But at the same time, not really. Like, there aren't a lot of great home run parks on this slate. And the parks that are good, you don't necessarily have the best matchups or offenses, depending on which one, what you're talking about. Like, you have a good home run park in LA, but the Dodgers are facing Skeens and the Pirates are facing Yamamoto. So you're not going to get a really high implied run total there. Arizona, you have Sale versus Gallen. Petco, you have Boz versus King. Colorado, you have the Rockies playing, so half of that game is not going to have a high run total. And then, you have a Reds offense that's kind of average against an average-ish pitcher in Freeland. So I wouldn't have been shocked if the Reds had a higher total than the A's, but I'm not surprised they don't either. Yankee Stadium, you have Barrios, Carrasco's, who kind of middle of the road, slightly below average pitchers. Wouldn't have been shocked if the Yankees had a higher run total than the A's, but not shocked, the other way either. So it's kind of just, when you look at everything in context, no, I'm not surprised. I think you can kind of argue that any of the Reds, Yankees, or A's should probably have it. But to your point, in general, it's weird for the A's to have it on a 12-game slate that includes Coors Field. Sean Burke, somebody that I had never heard of until he made the opening day start for the White Sox this year. Limited sample, 23.5% K percentage against righties, 18.5% against lefties, 367 expected ISO to righties, 434 expected WOBA. Those numbers obviously are not going to hold, you would think, but also they're really, really, really bad. So assuming they come back to earth, they're still probably not going to be very good. 167 expected ISO to lefties is, more manageable. Still a 350 expected WOBA, though. I'm not getting to him much. Field's not getting to him much. Severino is getting 13% ownership at 8K. I am 2x the field on him. I do think that our projection on Severino is a little bit higher than I've seen across the industry. The matchup is fine. We have him projected similarly to Pablo Lopez, and he's getting similar ownership, a little bit less ownership, but he is also less expensive. So I do like getting the Severino here. He is a pitcher that you never really know what to make of him, because he was legitimately good with the Yankees for a while. Then you dealt with injuries, and then you've kind of just seen kind of sporadic performances from him, but does have a very good stuff plus grade, 108.5 this year, 108.5 last year, 21% strikeout percentage last year, only 16.5% so far this year, but you do get a good strikeout matchup here. Velo is still right around 96 miles an hour on his fastball, which is in line with what you were seeing last year. So I do like Severino. Our projections like Severino a lot. I'm about 2x the field on him. Offensively, not a lot of ownership coming into this one, despite the high run total for the A's. Langolier is getting 12%, Butler around 10%, so is Soderstrom, so is Rooker. So again, this is going to be one of the highest owned teams on the slate, but in terms of raw ownership, it's still not that high. You can still easily stack the A's if you want to, and not have to make any really crazy concessions to lower ownership elsewhere in your lineup. Einsteinium said it was Jorge. Good point. Einsteinium is going to be the one asking about shitty pitchers. Jorge is going to be the one asking about run totals. So I think the A's look fine here if you get to them. I'm not getting much right now, but that is something that obviously could just change between now and lock. There's no reason that I'm not getting the A's, really. They clearly look good. They have plenty of power in their lineup. They're affordable. somewhat. Like Soderstrom's expensive at 5,200, Butler's 5,200, Rooker's 5,400, Langoliers is only 4,600. So they're not super cost prohibitive, but they are relatively expensive compared to some other stacks that you could get to, especially on a slate where you do probably want to be paying for some combination, of Gilbert, Yamamoto, these pitchers, kind of towards the top. For the White Sox, I am getting to a little bit of them for value. Edgar Caro projected to hit 5th at 3,100. Andrew Vaughn getting 4% ownership at 2,800. Like, they're really cheap. And Severino, like I said, can get in trouble at times. This is a good park for offense. 164 expected ISO allowed to lefties, 118 to righties since the start of last year for Severino. So I am using the White Sox a little bit for value, not going too crazy on them, and certainly would not be mad if they kind of just disappear between now and lock. But they do have a 4-run total. It's not crazy low, especially in the context of this slate. So I don't mind getting to some of them for value, but I do like Severino quite a bit. Getting over the field on him. And then again, if you can get to the Astros, great. Larry said, did you see they moved Soderstrom to outfield so you can play him and Kurtz now? Yeah, that's big. It makes this team easier to stack from a positional standpoint. Obviously, you don't want to be in a position where you can't play both of Soderstrom and Kurtz, but now you can. Still waiting on that lineup to be confirmed. But if you get to them, great. It's a pretty good spot for them. They have, like I said, the highest total on the board. Pirates taking on the Dodgers in Dodger Stadium. Marquee pitching matchup here with Paul Skeens taking on Yamamoto. I mentioned it, kind of alluded to it earlier, but I personally went a little bit higher, and it's in the notes section here too, if you subscribe. I personally went a little bit higher on Yamamoto. I'm just a little bit more bullish on how deep he works into this game. We have his outs projection here, basically 5 1/3. And I think that's just being pulled down a little bit by him being a little bit limited at the start of the season, only threw 72 pitches in his first start. And then, at times I think was a little bit limited last year, as the Dodgers tend to do with their pitchers. But we have seen him fully stretched out now, going over 100 pitches. You have an above average matchup against the Pirates. The park is good for offense, but Yamamoto is just really, really good. That being said, even with a little bit higher projection on him, Field's getting to 29%. I'm getting to about 16. I think some of that, or a lot of that probably, is just me getting to even more Logan Gilbert than the Field. If the Field's going to play 30% Yamamoto and 45% Gilbert, I'm fine just playing even more Gilbert and it costing me a little bit of Yamamoto because Gilbert does project better, is a little bit less expensive, is in a better park. So I'm fine with the way that played out, but I do like Yamamoto here. Skeens on the other side, getting 10% ownership at 10K. I'm getting to about 5%. Brutal matchup, obviously, against the Dodgers in Dodger Stadium. So you're getting a park downgrade for Skeens. You're getting a really difficult matchup, obviously. Dodgers active roster ranked 17th in K percentage against right-handed pitching since the start of last year. 122 WRC plus is the highest in baseball. A lot of that, driven by the top of the order with Ohtani, with Betts. If you want to play Skeens, clearly go for it. He's really, really good. You don't need me to tell you that. But again, it's just a spot where he's getting enough ownership at 10% where I'm just still prioritizing Logan Gilbert over him, even though Gilbert is more popular. But both pitchers here, if you want to play either of them, great. Yamamoto is going to be the higher projected one. He's going to be the one that gets more ownership. I'm not getting to either offense here. I thought maybe I'd be getting some Dodgers just based on the talent level. Clearly, if you're going to get sub 5% owned Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, etc., that's not a crazy spot to be at in large field tournaments, but I'm still not getting to it. And the reason why is very obvious with Paul Skeens. Texas taking on the Giants in San Francisco to wrap this one up. 4.3 implied run total for the Rangers, 4 flat for the Giants. For the Rangers, Justin Verlander at 7,300. For the Giants, Nathan Eovaldi at 9,200. We have a higher projection on Eovaldi than I've seen in the industry, but I'm still not getting to him at 9,200. Just a really expensive price tag there. The park is really good. He, so far this year, has seen a little bit of a drop in stuff plus, but his strikeout percentage is actually up from 24% to 26% so far. Velo is down about 2 miles an hour on his fastball, which can be concerning. But again, he is still getting strikeouts so far. This park is a big park upgrade for him as well. But even with the higher than industry projection on him, he's getting 4% ownership. I'm getting like 1%. I am getting to Verlander here, which is scary, but he's only 7,300. He's only getting 7% ownership. I am using him as a contrarian mid-range SP2 option. He's showing up in like a quarter of my lineups right now. Maybe that comes down a little bit. Maybe it doesn't. But the strikeouts weren't there last year. They haven't really been there so far this year. 19% K percentage last year is up to 21% through 24 innings so far this year. His fastball velo is up about a mile per hour from last year. His stuff plus is up from 106 to 108. I got in trouble last year thinking that he was just going to eventually rebound because the stuff plus continued to look above average, and he never did. But again, it looks even better this year. His velo is up. And the biggest thing here is just that he is pitching in San Francisco. He is 7,300, and the Rangers do not have Corey Seager. Like, that's a big thing as well. You're taking the best hitter out of that lineup. It's still a dangerous lineup, but no Corey Seager does make a pretty big difference as far as the overall talent in that lineup. You also have a Jock Peterson that may have no idea how to hit anymore. I don't know. I think he's gotten a hit since then, but at one point was going through an 0 for 40 stretch. Not that that means like his career is over, but also dude just might not really be much of a hitter anymore. And you're in San Francisco here. So I'm not like looking at Justin Verlander saying, oh, I can't believe the field's not getting to him, or, I think he's safe or anything like that. But I do like the park. I do like that Seager's not in the lineup. I do like how Verlander's stuff in general has looked. I like the price tag. I like the lack of ownership. So I am fine with the fact that I'm getting to a pretty good amount of Verlander here as a contrarian SP2. If it goes poorly, it goes poorly, but I'm okay with it. So to recap, pitching, Logan Gilbert, clear number one for me. And then there's a huge drop-off as far as my player exposures go. Severino, Verlander, King, Yamamoto, 2 through 5 in terms of my exposures. For the field, it is Gilbert at the top, drop off to Yamamoto, and then another drop off to King, Pablo Lopez, Severino, Skeens, everybody else sub 10%. At catcher, for the field, Cal Raleigh, Shea Langoliers, Hunter Goodman. For me, it is punting catcher a lot. Carlos Narvaez, Edgar Quero. I was getting the Bo Naylor, but that game is gone. Cal Raleigh, my third highest owned catcher at the moment. At first base, I'm getting to some Andrew Vaughn as a punt. I'm getting to some Jake Berger. Kyle Manzardo, I would have liked, but he's gone. I do like Ben Rice here in Yankee Stadium. Second base, Semien, Bregman, Albie. So I guess I forgot to touch on offenses here with Texas. Apparently, I am getting to Rangers bats in addition to Verlander. And I do actually like that because I do think Verlander is pretty volatile at this point. Like I said, the stuff has looked good. The strikeout stuff hasn't. We've seen him just not get results in line with his stuff going back to last year. It is a park upgrade, or a park downgrade rather, for the Rangers going into San Francisco. 175 expected ISO allowed to righties since last year for Verlander, only 139 to lefties. So I am getting to some Semien at 4% owned. I'm getting above the field on Peterson at 4%. 3% ownership to Berger and Young, 7% to Langford, 4% to Garcia. So not much ownership at all coming into the Rangers, and I am getting above the field on them. Not to a point where they're going to make or break my night, but I do like the idea of being over on both sides here. Like, if a $7,300 Verlander doesn't end up being a pretty good play, there is a good chance that this very high upside Rangers offense that is very inexpensive, $3K salary on Semien, $2,500 on Peterson, $2,700 on Berger, Langford, $4,600 is the most expensive hitter in this lineup. Adolis Garcia is $4K. There's stolen base upside here in addition to power upside. So I think just when you look at the pricing here, there's probably going to be a useful piece from either Verlander or, useful pieces from the Rangers offense or Verlander. So given the cheap prices and the lack of ownership to any part of it, I do think it's pretty good that I'm getting above the field on both sides. I'm not getting to the Giants bats, which against Eovaldi, which is fine for me. That is a different kind of equation because of Eovaldi being 9,200. Eovaldi can go have a pretty solid start and still not really be a good play at 9,200. Whereas if Verlander stops the Rangers, the free Rangers, like, he kind of has to be good at 7,300. So I do like that approach. To get back to positions, Semien, like I said, my highest owned second baseman right now. It was Bregman, but he's not playing. Albies, Keyshaw are 2 and 3. At third base, it was Devers. Now it's Riley, Young, and Polanco. At shortstop, Polanco, Witt, De La Cruz. Outfield, Buxton, Grisham, Raley, Peterson, Judge, Rodriguez. So pretty wide open slate, pretty flat hitting exposures for me overall. Highest owned stacks overall, it was Boston. Now it's Seattle, New York, Texas, Atlanta. 5-man stacks, Texas, Atlanta, Seattle, Houston, Cincinnati, but everything's pretty flat for me. Einsteinium said, think 40. Yeah, I mean, I have 47% on Gilbert. I think that's probably around where he comes in. Maybe he gets to 50, but there's 21 total pitchers, and there are other good pitchers too. Like Yamamoto is clearly going to get a lot of ownership. King's going to get ownership. Skeens is going to get ownership because of his name. Yeah, like I think I would expect Gilbert comes in around 50%, give or take. So yeah, that wraps this one up. And I think also in smaller field, higher stakes, Gilbert will be more than 50. But in your large field, 29,000 entry, $8 lotto on DraftKings, I think he comes in around 50-ish. So that wraps this one up. Thank you for checking out the show. It was a long one, a lot of games to talk about. Don't forget to sign up for the Run the Sims projections using the link in the description below. Those are the projections on the screen. They're the ones I used for the show. They're the ones put together by Utical, Brick75, Nerdy Tenor, and myself. And they are available using the link in the description below. LSU for Life said, I don't think my boy Skeen's going to get much ownership. I think 10%, give or take. People aren't going to like jam him in because he doesn't project well and because he's facing the Dodgers in LA, but people are also going to click on Paul Skeens because he's Paul Skeens. So I think right around 10% probably. That's where he's projected right now, and I think it makes sense. So thanks again for checking out the show. I will maybe do a show tomorrow. Not sure. Keep an eye. Subscribe to the channel so you get notifications if I do. Keep an eye on my Twitter. I'll let you know. If you sign up for Run the Sims, we also have the Discord. You can jump in there. It gets posted when I'm doing shows. We'll definitely be back next week. If not, thanks again. Hit the thumbs up, all that stuff, and have a good weekend.